Welcome back. Oh, I'm excited for this one. For those of you who listen, if you've listened to even a handful of our episodes, you know that we always like to end with a song that's either connected to the theme, a favorite song of our guest, or just a song that Lisa and I are trying to find a way to share because we love it.
Yeah,
That's like,
that's
whoa.
more often than not the reason. Let's see. I like this song. What episode could we write around it?
And what's funny is Lisa's just so in the biz and has been and is so friends with so many people who are in the biz that from the very beginning she's like, we cannot play the music because of copyright, but we can say the
Right.
lyrics. And so in case you're wondering why we don't do that, and that's why we send you to our playlist. But
Which
today,
very few people follow. So I will
okay.
put it up again. I'll put it in the stories this week. But we have a playlist from season one and one we're building for season two. I mean, it's no big deal that nobody watches it, but it's every song we've ever quoted. So we've got all of season one. I'll put that
It's a
in the story
great
and season two.
playlist.
It
It's a
is. It's a
great
fun, and
playlist.
it because it's weaved in with our guests as well. Like some of these songs, you would be like, that's a weird one for them to choose, but it really more often than not directly ties to whatever the episode
Yes.
was.
So that's what this episode's about. It's about music. It's a love language for Lisa and I. It's a one of the first things that attracted Lisa and I to each other. And
Yeah.
I think I'm going to speak for both of us when I mean, right up there with humor, sometimes above humor, sometimes right below humor. Like the music other people relate to us with is major in the relationships that have formed in our entire lives. So it is a
Absolutely.
big attractor. Is
Yeah.
what kind of music? I mean, you grew up with musicians. You are living with them,
I am
and
living with them. I birthed
I am
them.
too. I guess I am too. I birthed
Yeah.
them, but music is a huge part of
Was
my
it a huge part?
childhood.
I was gonna say, was it a huge part for you growing up? Like, did your family play a lot of
Well,
records?
first of all, my grandmother and
Yeah.
grandfather were phenomenal musicians. They were always in a band, and which is funny but true. Like even when at the end of they met, or maybe not met, but like in their very young years, were
Okay.
in a band together. It was kind of Dixielandish, and then later in life, they were in a band, and like all
Okay.
throughout their life, they had gigs. And then
And
so I have
he
aunts
played
and uncles.
drums and she sang?
Piano. No, she's
Oh, she played
phenomenal.
piano.
She could play anything. If you hummed it for her, she could figure it out.
Ah, I love that.
So good. Everybody loved Harry and Mary. They were a kick. So very musical family, always a lot of singing, always a lot of instruments. That was big. And my dad's family was a little less musical, but my grandmother could sing. And
Mm.
so like whether regardless, like, just with family and friends, music and performing in the round was like a big part of my childhood. And
Yeah.
so, and then we always took lessons, music lessons.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of my musical education came from my older brother. Like I remember
Ah,
being in the car with him, just wanting to hang out when he was like willing to hang out with me because he's older, and like driving somewhere waiting for his girlfriend to get out of her restaurant job and going to some record shop for him to find a Blue Oyster Cult album, or him getting the
nice.
Oingo Boingo record and like teaching me all the words to the songs. So he liked whether it was like Journey or Oingo Boingo or
Yeah,
Rush,
that's quite
like those
that's a
kind of
lot.
things.
That's a
It
quite
was a
a
gamut.
yeah.
But whatever he was into, he was so into it, and he would just
Mm.
like feel it. And then my dad was that way with music, so it just sort of became who I was. And I liked a wide range
Hmm.
because there was a wide range of interest in my family. My dad liked ABBA, but he also liked opera, and they
Mm.
liked a lot of the classics. So um, they were pretty permissive about us going to concerts, which surprised me for strict parents, but they were all about us, like supporting music. So that was cool. Although my
Yeah.
mom was really like, she saw a album that my brother bought. And it was one of the Foreigner albums with a girl cowering beneath a urinal, and she marched him right back. We're not paying for that. You are not going to, our money is not going to support that.
I wholeheartedly support that. But
You,
you know,
su- you
it
support my mom, or you support
yes,
the album
I
cover?
know I
Okay.
support. But it cracks me up. It makes me think. I know we referenced very briefly Spinal Tap in the last episode, but it makes me think of
Don't
it's a
smell
fine
the
line
glove.
between
Clever and stupid.
yeah. But I mean that's the thing. There's so much, especially that sort of '70s rock that is like I no one would ever do an album cover like that again, and yet it's iconic. So I mean I
Yeah.
get it. Like there's some stuff that the kids will listen to or whatever. I'm like, yeah, nah, I can't with that. But whatever, I am not Tipper Gore, so I'm not
What
gonna keep them from that.
an album cover I remember staring at and being like, I don't know if I was in awe of it or if I was a little freaked out by it, was that Queen one with like it's not like a robot, but what is it? Like,
Oh, I don't know.
that it's a very famous Queen album, you'd recognize it, but it
Okay.
looks like a giant robot like holding the band in its hand,
Oh,
maybe. I can't
interesting.
remember. But
Okay.
there was something about it that was a little like there was just a lot going on for a while in the art on the album art. I have some here too because I was thinking about that, like hiatus coyote and Krongbin and stuff like that. Like
Mm.
I love that some people are getting back into album art,
Oh
but this
yeah.
one, Blood Orange, look at that.
Oh, we saw Blood Orange.
I
Liam and I
know,
saw Blood
I
Orange
know,
at Pitchfork.
I remember.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so
yeah.
yeah, for me so my grandmother on my dad's side was a pianist. So and she was a piano teacher, so and I have very long fingers, so I was born to play piano, which I of course do not, because like any child that had to take lessons, you quit and then you wish you had stayed at it. Darren is like your grandmother in that he doesn't read music, he just listens. He hears it. Liam and Charlotte don't read music either. They hear it and play. But music was my parents were very into music. I mean, my dad was a boomer, but so he liked all the early rock and roll. I always thought of my parents as like my dad was the Rolling Stones and my mom was the Beatles. My mom was always very much more into the pop aspect, whereas my dad loved the Stones and Steely Dan. And so it for us in for sure on the weekends, like we were playing records all the time, interspersed with Disney records. As I said a couple weeks ago, I would get to I dress myself up as Mary Poppins. So we were listening to those like Disney soundtracks. But then, yeah, Darren was actually asking me the other day, we were driving down the Sunset Strip, as one does when they live in LA. And he asked me, he's like, what are
It's like
your
a
first,
lyric right
I
there.
know, totally. And then he was like, what are your first like memories of California, not from when we moved here? And I said to him, it really was the California sound because my dad loved Fleetwood
Mm.
Mac and, as I said, Steely Dan and
Beach
um
Boys.
Beach Boys, was his all-time favorite. Absolutely. Although
Mm,
he was not like Liam, he kind of stopped at sort of Pet Sounds and Smile and said that he was more the surf stuff, whereas Liam
sure.
got into Pet Sounds and Smile and all those things. But yeah, to me, like the Eagles, not the Eagles, Eagles,
Mhm.
all of that stuff was what we listened to growing up. So when any muscle memory of what I thought California was started with Eagles and Fleetwood Mac, Steely Dan, and then moved into the Go-Go's, and all the whole 80s sort of whiskey scene and that sort of thing. Even the other day we were listening to The Ocean and from Led Zeppelin, and I was like, I know they are not from California, but to me they're so intertwined in that Sunset Strip mecca,
Yes.
that it even listening to Zeppelin makes me think of California. So yeah,
You
I grew up with all that stuff.
you are reminding me that I did like a little deep dive, which I tend to do when I get into something on Linda Ronstadt last year when
Uh,
I watched that episode of This Is Us that has, kind of has a pretty pivotal song of hers. And I was like, I gotta remind myself of her because that was big when I was little. Like I was
yes.
playing that on the piano and people were into it. And her, like, you know, there is I think it's a documentary there that
Mm-hmm.
I must have come across where like Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris and people were being interviewed about her
Yeah.
and just what an influence she was, and that she pulled together a band that ended up forming Eagles.
Oh, I
Like
think I did
that
know
Don
that. Yeah.
Henley and
Yep. Glenn Fry
Glenn
and
Fry met on the road when they were in
oh,
her band.
interesting. Okay.
Anyway, and she's got such a California sound. Like that
Yes,
is
she
such
does.
a
And
an
what a phenomenal voice. The girl in Charlotte's vocal jazz sang Blue Bayou. And I was just like, oh, I forgot how much I love that song.
that is such a good
And
song.
that I will say the girl sang it phenomenally, but I was
I
like,
bet.
oh, that is such a good song. So yeah, and then, so grow up around music and records and definitely in my bloodstream. And then yeah, sophomore, junior year in high school, I start to meet boys in bands.
Mm.
And the rest is history.
I was just thinking that like I got like that love for music and that idea of just new music and just really feeling it, like feeling the actual music from my
Mhm.
brother and my dad, but from my sister, I really learned to just like listen to and feel lyrics.
Oh my God,
And
no
because of like
question.
things she was going through, crushes she had, breakups she had, and stuff like, you know, playing a song over and over, writing down the lyrics as we had to do back then, stop the tape, rewind,
Oh
write them
yeah.
down,
Yep.
wait for it to come on the radio and try to tape it, that kind of
Yep.
thing. So yeah, those things permeated my relationship to music. And then, yeah, obviously you develop your own as well, because yeah, I wasn't hanging out. I wasn't as cool as you. I wasn't hanging out with any bands. Definitely, I dated people who ended up in bands, but I don't think they were at the time. But my yeah, like that's one of my favorite things to do in any gathering is find out what was your first concert from people
Yeah.
because it's fascinating. Like first of all, how old they were, who they
Yep.
went with, and then what it was. Right? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's funny because you talking about the taping. I was saying I remember this is how music, important music, has always been. But it does it like when I meet people that aren't into music, it's so foreign to me because it's always been so much a part of my life that I can remember the first song I heard when I plugged in my very first clock radio. It was
Mhm.
Hey 19. So it's like I
That's
remember.
amazing. I think mine was Steely Dan.
Was it really?
Yeah, I don't think it was Hey 19, but oh my gosh,
Yeah,
wow.
say 19. And you're right. Like I had the little tape recorder right by the clock radio so that I could press it and make, first start mixtapes. I remember the first, like my first album that I bought was, which seems late in the game, but my parents were giving me stuff up until then. My first purchased album of my own accord was Welcome to the Pleasure Dome by Frankie Goes
Neat.
to Hollywood.
That's really cool.
Yeah. What was your first one? And then tell me your first concert and all the things you like to ask people.
I am super confused about what was my first album, but I'm pretty sure it was Queen.
Okay.
Um, but I can't remember which one. But I it's
Maybe the
either
one with the robot
Queen,
hand.
it's either Queen or like Grease, like the soundtrack to
Oh,
Grease. So
interesting.
I might have bought them both. We were like at Kmart and we were
Gotcha.
given some money and I might have bought them both. And
Yeah.
like, yeah. Um, yeah, Queen was or like We Will Rock You, like
Sure. Of
that
course. Yeah.
era of
Yeah.
stuff. I also had a wide range of things I liked.
Yes.
My first concert, I like to explain. Like
Okay.
there's a first concert that I got taken to, and then the
Okay.
first concert that I actually like chose and was planning on going to, and was my first, which is fun because I'm actually seeing them next week for the second time ever. But the first one I went to, and people will say now, "Oh no, she's cool." Trust me, she wasn't cool at the time. Sheena Easton.
I knew
This
that's who
is
you were going to say. I
it
knew
was
you were going to say her.
before she did anything with Prince. She was like
Oh,
Morning
okay.
Train and
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. I
like
actually liked her better
the
then. I
smooth
did not like the stuff
jazz
with Prince.
middle-aged
Yes.
people I babysat for were super into her, and they also went to like Kenny G or something, so
Yeah.
they
Sure.
brought me and my other friend who babysat for them to the concert, but they had like box seats and we were on the lawn like picking our
Mm,
noses. We were like, oh, we weren't into it. I do like her now, but I mean, I there wasn't much about it at the time I was connecting with.
sure.
And the night before, I had met the guy that I don't know if you can say dating, we weren't driving, but the boy that was sort of my boyfriend freshman year, who has been in a band his whole life. I met him the night before at a dance, and like a local, pretty fun, punk band was playing, and like we just hit it off right away talking about music. And he asked for my number. And I didn't know how soon he was going to call, but all night I was at Sheena Easton. Like, God, I hope he doesn't call. And my dad tells him I'm at this concert, and my mom tells him. And like, I didn't think it happened. I came home, there's no messages. And Julie and I wake up, and I'll never forget this not my sister Julie, but my friend Julie, who went to the
Okay.
concert with me. We're in my two twin beds in my room looking at each other, and we sit up. My dad comes in, some boy named Matthew called for you last night. And I said, yeah. He goes, I told him you were at the Sheena Easton concert. And we were like, no. And my dad thought we were overreacting. And sure enough, later when we were like officially dating, he said he wasn't sure about me based on that. He said he looked at his friend George. He goes, she's at this Sheena Easton concert.
That's amazing.
So exactly what I feared and imagined did happen, but luckily
Yep.
he gave me another chance. So then
That's
the real
amazing.
first concert I went to, and I don't know if you guys had this, but in Southern California, temporary perms. Do you remember those? Those temporary
No,
perms
because
that
I definitely got a perm.
well, this is before my mom would, allow me to get a perm. This was this temporary perm in a bottle thing. It smelled like grapes and lasted 4 days. It was weird.
I've
And it
never
was
heard of this.
sticky. Terrible. It's probably why, because they probably throw everything at Southern California, and if it doesn't last, it doesn't go anywhere else. Drank a little Boone's Farm. My sister
Nice.
drove us. It was Thompson Twins at Irvine
Oh,
Meadows Amphitheater,
nice.
and I'm actually seeing them next week.
Are you seeing Tom Bailey with Thomas Dolby?
I don't think so.
Okay, because
maybe
they're out touring together, and then they're also doing this little tubular 80s thing, which is coming here in like next weekend too, with Men Without Hats. And
it's been a really long time since we bought these tickets, so you could be right. I have no idea. All I know is Thompson Twins at like the Crystal Ballroom. So I'll let you know.
Very nice.
Anyway,
I have never
what about
seen
you?
Thompson Twins. So my first concert was both something I wanted to go to and was taken to, because I was only in the 6th grade. And my whole family went down to Miami University, Oxford, and saw Hall & Oates on the Private Eyes tour. And I believe that Saga opened up for them. And I only point that out because Darren has recently become a ginormous Saga fan, because little did we know they are still around and they have like 45 albums out. So Hall & Oates was my first concert. My mom, again, my parents were so into music. My mom took me to a couple things. I got to see Prince on Purple Rain, because she took me to that at Riverfront in Cincinnati.
That's amazing.
My dad,
I saw that concert too. It's amazing that your mom took you to that. I can't imagine.
My mom took me and my friend Jamie. And then my dad took me to the Go-Go's under duress. But yeah, so I did and then we did concerts with them. Like Hall & Oates was a staple throughout my life, especially with my mom. I mean, I've seen them several times and taking my mom to see them and so forth. So I've seen them a lot, for sure. Wow. What's your favorite concert you've ever seen?
Prince is up there for sure.
Have you seen him? Did you see him other than Purple Rain?
Yes, I saw him. Would have been like 23, 24 years ago in Portland, and my friend Mark, who's very into 80s music, who I went to college with, and his friend Karen are good friends, and we got 4 tickets, and Brendan's like, "Who you taking?" I'm like, "You." He didn't think he liked Prince. Like he was very into like, he was way more into like British, like he was into New Order and but then also things like Fishbone and Morrissey, the Smiths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he wasn't as aware of liking Prince. Like he really wasn't until like I kind of took him to that concert. He could appreciate him, but took him to that concert and he was blown away by a few things. One was like his capacity for the enormous, and then the acoustic all in one, like one show. He had 3 very different sets. Yeah. He had like his big diva stuff, and then he had just a musical ensemble, including Maceo Parker. And, I don't know if that was the tour when George Clinton was with him too, but like he had incredible, horn and like just musicianship happening on stage with him. And then he did an acoustic set where he's like cracking people up. He had everyone eating out of the palm of his hand and just like doing this acoustic set in this filled arena, like huge arena. And Brendan was like, hands down, that is one of the best shows I've ever seen. And then, when I showed him that, George Harrison being inducted into the Hall of Fame, when they played My Guitar Gently Weeps, all those artists and his solo at the end. Yeah. Now, if anyone asks Brendan some of his favorite guitarists, he will list him like almost immediately, but maybe not first, but he really appreciates that I took him to that and wishes he had seen more. And the thing I like about, like I saw him here in Portland, I saw him in Nashville. In both places, he does that thing where he also shows up at a much smaller venue later that night. And in Nashville, we got to see him do that. And that was
that's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
Nice.
Not Brendan, my friends, but yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I only saw Prince on Purple Rain, but and that's fine.
To answer your other question, or to answer your question though, with an extra example, like I've liked a lot of concerts and I've gone away going, that was amazing. And more often than not, I felt that way. But where I was totally surprised because I didn't know their music and it didn't matter was the Frames.
Yeah.
Like I that nothing compares to that. Nothing compares to like that feeling
Yeah.
that was created, the energy in the room, the way he interacts with the crowd.
I mean, I
And
have
that
heard
was
that,
unbelievable.
and I have heard that he holds a crowd like nobody's business.
And we're talking
Yeah.
about Glenn Hansard and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
frames.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, that's the other plug I will say, because everything else sort of, nothing's standing out more than anything else. And I've been able to see a lot of concerts and they've been fun and some have been disappointing,
I don't think if I've ever
yeah.
had a disappoint. I'm sure I have had disappointing. Yeah, I used to say my favorite concert was Nick Kershaw and Paul Young. And that was one, it was a
I saw
fantastic.
that tour. That was
Yeah, it was a fantastic show. Paul Young put on an amazing show. I still absolutely adore Nick Kershaw. He's actually Human Racing is 40 years old or whatever this year, and he is touring on it in England. And it kills me because I would love to see that again. That was a super fun show. And it was the first show I was ever really up super close. So we had like third row tickets. And Amy Pickard, a past guest, we always laugh because we didn't really know each other. We didn't know each other then. Well, we weren't in the same scene yet. But I was on this side of I was on the left hand, she was on the right hand, and we were both in the third row. So it's just like so funny. Then I would say, I mean, I can't not say Bowie because the chance that we got to see Bowie like 5 weeks before he retired and never played again. And we saw him in a very small venue, theater type venue in Chicago. That was phenomenal. And he was so good. And he just seemed like such a nice man. So everything I've ever heard about Bowie is that he was a nice man, and it came across that way on stage. And then the third one would definitely be the shirt I'm wearing today, which is I got to see Suede, which I never thought I'd see. It was with the Manic Street Preachers, which I wasn't impressed with, but London Suede, so good. And again, a band that I just never in a million years thought would get to see. It was one of those things that when I got the tickets, I almost cried because I was just like, I just never, I didn't think they'd ever tour again. They
I
hadn't put an
remember.
album out. Tame Impala, also I know Peter, that's one of Peter's
I was
favorites.
just gonna
Tame
say,
Impala
like,
was unbelievable.
Peter will still say that is one of his favorite concerts, and he's been to so many concerts.
Yeah, I
And
mean
like
that was,
it
and we
stands
were
out.
so far back at the Hollywood Bowl, which is ginormous, and I was so glad because it was so visual. I think Kevin Parker's a cutie patootie, but I didn't really need to see him. It was a spectacular, so I'm so glad we were far back. Of course, I've seen Duran a million times, and I always enjoy them. But there was something else I was thinking. Oh, when you said something you didn't know that you didn't care, I went to see, I love Iron and Wine, but I had never, I went on a last minute ask to see Iron and Wine and Andrew Bird. And I really didn't know anything about Andrew Bird. And that will go down as one of my favorite concerts too, because I, I'm at an age now that I don't mind going to a show that I don't know anything about and just letting it and now I just love, like I said, I've always loved Iron and Wine. I've seen him speak several times, but I love Andrew Bird now too. So I love those little fun, like
Yeah.
unexpected experiences as well.
Well, my kids were pretty young, especially Miles. He might have been 8, 9, maybe, when we went to December to Remember, which is put on by a local radio station, and we saw like it was a three for it was Tegan and Sarah,
Mm.
M83, and the Killers.
Oh, wow.
It's a weird trio. And it
That
was
is a
at the
weird trio.
arena, and my kids like bought the t-shirts and they were so into it. And we were so concerned about Griffin and sound that we got him the headphones. He
Mhm.
was totally into it. And Miles was the one who like by the time the Killers came on, he couldn't take it anymore. He was so overstimulated. I had to like leave with him and go walk around. But when I
Mm.
saw the Killers at the time, they put on a really good show.
Oh, I
They're
bet. I
really good.
wish.
They're Vegas, they
Yeah,
know what they're
yeah,
doing.
totally. I wish it's funny because this would be the 20th anniversary of Hot Fuss. I wish they were touring on that because Keane is touring on Hopes and
I
Fears,
love
and we're
Keen.
seeing them, Darren, Liam, and I at the Greek in September. I love Keane too, but it's funny because I put Keane, Killers, and Scissor Sisters all together, and all three of them I learned about from Saturday Night Live.
Oh
I
yeah.
saw all three of them, and just that fell in love with them immediately. I've seen Keen several times, and I'm super excited about seeing Hopes and Fears. I wish the Killers would go out and do Hot Fuss. That would be so fun.
That would be amazing. When Peter was young, a friend of ours who's really into Keen heard they were going to be at a record shop, and he came over and got Brendan and Peter and took them, and they got to meet them and have
Oh,
them
that's
like sign
nice.
something. And then I don't know if you've heard of Sasquatch, that music festival in Gorge, Washington, but we have a good friend he's a lawyer, he's friends with the producer, and he's like done some work for them. So he and Brendan for 2 years in a row took like 12 and 13-year-old Peter, and then 13 and 14-year-old Miles, his son Miles, to this concert. And it was so funny because his wife at the time and I were like, okay, so you're telling us it's going to be like 2 middle-aged guys, 2 children, and like a bunch of really high young people. And they're like, basically, yeah. And she was like, Brendan, you're in charge. And Peter's memories of that to this day are so good and so funny. And just so, I mean, they got to see Outcast reunite there. He got to see Macklemore at the height of his like right when his big album was coming out, and listen to Macklemore talk about being a kid there and couldn't believe he was actually performing there. They got to meet Imagine Dragons, and they got to Tyler the Creator. They got to meet Tyler the Creator. But they were kids, like chubby cheeks and stuff. And like the stuff he goes back to now and looks at Brendan's pictures and he's like, this is just amazing that I got to do this at 12, and it really kind of created such a huge appreciation for artists and live performing and stuff, because they got to be backstage with the artists.
Yeah, I don't think Liam's ever.
Major Lazer was another one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's ever been any. I mean, because we lived in Chicago and Taste of Chicago always had big bands. Like Liam's first show was Elvis Costello and Charlotte's was the Go-Go's, and they were both babies. So I don't remember it, but I don't think there's ever. Liam's had opportunities to meet actors because they've gone to festivals and things in that, but I don't think they've ever got to meet anybody musician wise. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. No, top of my head. But
I'm pretty sure Tame Impala was there way back then too, but
sure.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm trying to imagine a life without music when I run up against people like that, and I'm sure there's things I'm not into that people can't understand. So there's no judgment. It's just it's so ingrained in me and our whole family that I can't comprehend it not being part of my life. My dad used to say that if he ever lost his eyesight, it would be the end of him because he loved to read. And I probably feel that way about my hearing. I know Liam does. He's always very conscious of his hearing because it's my lifeblood for sure.
Well, that's the thing. Like if you close your eyes, you can visualize.
Yeah.
Like if you can't see, you can visualize. And I don't know what that's like for people who weren't born with sight, but I got to imagine they can visualize. But you can't imagine the way things sound.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can, but it's a little different. I don't know. Maybe I'm way wrong about that. Like prove me wrong for sure. But I agree with you. I feel like if I close my eyes, I can see what I want to see while I'm hearing things. I don't know. I don't know.
And you said it. I mean, I'd be remiss. I love music for sure, but it's so often the lyrics are what pulls on my heartstrings. I mean, there are some amazing jazz and instrumentals that I love, no question, that I hear singing in and of itself. But I was thinking the other day, like I have never thought of, I am not a Swiftie by any stretch of the imagination, but I really love Tortured Poets Department, and I do think it's because the lyrics are amazing, and they're and of course I love the little story behind it because I love Matty Healy, but the whole aspect of it, like I listen to these songs and I'm like, geez, she is writing what I felt at that age, or when I was younger. Like the lyrics, I can relate to all of them, and I think that's one of the things that makes her such a touchstone, Taylor Swift, because I think her lyrics really. And especially as she's gotten older, they
really land for girls who want to be that empowered or who want to find the words for what they're feeling. I do. She really knows how to capture that a lot. I mean, that's what I love about a lot of lyricists. I was thinking that like my kids were always into lyrics and asking what things meant. And I loved that. And I was thinking recently, like Brendan and I had a huge influence because we didn't play children's music. Like they
Yeah,
were
we
into
didn't
our
either.
music at a very early age. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, this week we're going to play a lot of Beatles and you're going to hear that. And your grandfather was really into Elvis. So I'm going to play you some of that. And then, here's some other stuff. Here's some female artists. Here's like a whole week of Michael Jackson or, Prince or something. So they have these memories and then here's some random stuff. Like here's Vampire Weekend. Here's the Violent Femmes. And they love that. And so every birthday, Brendan would burn a DVD or burn a CD for them with all their favorite songs. And they collect those. They still have them because the
Nice.
car that the boys share, has a CD player. But I love that for so long. And now they bring music to us,
Yeah,
like I wouldn't
absolutely.
know about Krungbin and Men I Trust if it weren't for my boys.
Totally. I wouldn't know about Tame
I
Impala if it wasn't for Liam.
right. And
Yeah.
then I was just thinking, there's many of those. Like Miles got really into 80s Japanese disco. Like, how would I have ever discovered that? But recently I put on Arrested Development, the group,
Yeah.
not the TV show.
Yes. Yeah.
And Miles didn't know who it was. I
Oh.
was like, yay!
Again, I'm back.
And I was curious, like what those are for you. And then also I was thinking it would be fun to just end with like, what are you listening to now? So
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, great. Gosh. So yeah, Tame Impala for sure. Right now, Liam is, I was just having this conversation the other day. Liam is so, because he's got everything at his fingertips, he listens to everything. And he and I were actually just having this conversation last weekend about how he's trying to kind of whittle it down because it's like, is he ever really getting into anything because he's listening to so much? But yeah, he created for me an ambient playlist that I love. It's a perfect thing to fall asleep to read to. Tame Impala for sure. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, I know Krungbin. I can't off the top of I think because there's so much, so he'll hear something that he thinks I would love and he'll just send it to me, but I can't think of something right off the top of my head recently. But even things like Pet Sounds, I didn't ever really listen to that until he got into it. And then, we went to see Brian Wilson play that at Pitchfork, whatever, 2016. But I'm so grateful that he has such a wide breadth of knowledge because he never feels super attached to whether I like something or I don't like something. And he sends the stuff he thinks Darren's going to like to Darren, and he sends the stuff he thinks I'm going to like to me, which is fun. But that kid knows a lot of music. It's kind of crazy how much he listens to. What am I listening to now? I am the queen of playlists. I very rarely listen to just an album or an artist unless I have made a playlist of the artist. So I've got quite a few Tortured Poet Department songs on some playlists. I'm always a sucker for anything 80s. So I made a playlist of albums I hadn't listened to in a while, like General Public and Howard Jones and Nick Kershaw and all that stuff that I grew up with in high school.
Share that with me. I love that.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever work in a record store? I worked in a record store too, which was hugely impactful. Yeah.
I didn't. I actually thought about it, but I always had that restaurant gig from my first job that I had, every year, and they kept promoting me to like waiter and then bartender and stuff. But no, but I did think about it, and then I thought I would spend all my money there.
You know what? I didn't really, but I don't think I did really, but it was nice because, it was Camelot, so it was a chain, but it was, I got to hear one of the cool things was it was the first time the Beatles had come out on CD, so we played that a lot in the store. David and David, I learned about at Camelot. I have some really good friends. One of my best friends still to this day, I met at Camelot. Yeah, so that was definitely impactful for me as well.
The name of the record store we always went to was called Licorice Pizza.
Oh yeah. Which the movie's named after.
Yes.
Yeah. I have not been there, but Darren and Charlotte went and saw it afterwards because they love the movie. I love that. So what do you listen to? And then you can take us out with the song.
I listen to a lot of the things my kids are listening to. So like a lot of, Miles is really into Erykah Badu. So we've been listening to that a lot. Steve Lacy and Kendrick. There's always a lot of
Oh,
Kendrick
yeah.
going. But what I keep listening to, just keep going to is Maggie Rogers. I really,
Ah,
really am digging that. Like, and I love her description of it, like where she, you know, she came from sort of bluegrassy, but then she started to like fuse it with dance music. And then Miles told me later about what's his name, Pharrell's reaction to her. And there's a whole viral video out there of him coming to NYU where she was studying and looking at a bunch of different artists. And he was like, I have no notes for you. This is incredible. You've created your own sound. So it is hard
cool.
to describe what she does, but I was listening to it at first. I'm like, I like it. And the more I listen to it, I really like it. Like it stays with me and it's just kind of nice to have on in the house. I like it. So I'm excited. I'm going to see her in October.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, she just got rave reviews at Bonnaroo, I think she was just
Yeah.
at. Yeah, that's
She's
cool.
young, like to
Yeah,
be
she is
her
young.
lyrics are incredible. Like just like I'm trying to remember which song it was. I think maybe it's Alaska where it's like I walked off me or I walked off you and I walked off an old me. You know,
Oh,
like where she
wow.
would like I just love that line.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
cool line. I love
yeah.
that. So,
Anyway.
what are you quoting for this week to wrap it up?
Mm, I
Maybe it's
don't
that.
know. I think yeah, maybe that was it.
There you go.
Alaska by Maggie
All
Rogers.
right, we got it. Done and done.
It's
It's
funny.
two in a row where we're like, oh, wait.
I had
It's
something
like,
pulled up and it's not there. So I'm
it's okay.
blanking because
That's a good one.
so much music discussion just all of a sudden like clears my palate for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, that's the end of our summer fun month of lightheartedness. But we have a fantastic interview next week with Susan Liddy and her practice, Vibrant Menopause Solutions. It was very valuable information. Once again, you all know I don't want this to be a menopause pod, but Susan comes at this in a completely different way, or she has done the work around menopause because she went through it. And so I'm going to invite you to come back for sure and listen to that one.
She's very thorough because
Very thorough.
she's giving me a complimentary consultation and I'm amazed at how thorough it is. And
That's
you know,
awesome.
Carrie does need this to a little bit be a menopause podcast. So thanks.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic July. It's hard to believe we're entering into August. And we've got one more month for you to sign up for the retreat. And that link, as always, is in the show notes. And we'll see you back here next week.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.